Hey, it's Michael here from Oilers Live with the heavy hockey postgame following Game 6, an exciting Oilers 4-2 win over the LA Kings, forcing a Game 7 winner-take-all matchup back in Edmonton. I'll get into it, but this was potentially one of the worst officiated games I've watched in a very long time. As always, with the postgame, I'm going to do the good, the bad, and some questions going into the next game. And lots of good in this game. So let's get right into it. So it wouldn't be an Oilers game if you're not talking about Connor McDavid, who just continues his playoff tear. He's now averaging 2 points a game in the playoffs. After getting the team into the last game, McDavid was flying again and making the most defensive-minded players like Deneau look like pylons. And Connor's definitely found his adjustment in his playoff game. He was looking great. Paired a lot last night with Leon Draisaitl, who was playing at 50%, showed he's still a cut above most players in the league today. And when he and Connor are on the ice together, he's the best player at making sure McDavid gets the pass right at the right times. Cody Ceci, I want to talk about him because he's been quietly having a good series. And he logged the most minutes of all defensemen last night with Nurse out of the lineup. Cody Ceci's been, I think, he hasn't been noticeable, which for a guy that plays his amount of minutes says something about his game. Not a lot of people talking about him, but I think that's a good thing. And Cody Ceci's done his job. He's come in and done that game after game. And then you got to talk about the rest of the defense stepping up in the absence of Nurse. We had Kulak, Barrie, Russell, Keith, Bouchard, Broberg, who only really spent about just over 3 minutes on the ice, but everybody played a really good game. I thought Russell was getting everywhere and getting in front of pucks like he always does, and probably saved a couple of really good opportunities for the Kings. And Barrie with the game go-ahead goal had a good game. I mean, he didn't look great on the one power play we had, but it was. I don't know if you can chalk that up to rust. It's pretty difficult to get into a game having one power play like that. And then talk about Evander Kane, who continues to score, is now leading the playoffs with 7 goals after scoring the empty net goal. But just getting his puck, getting his stick on every puck, and Josh Archibald throwing his weight around with a number of hits and even a good opportunity on the wraparound. Smith made some solid saves too when he needed to. So all in all, there's a lot of players I didn't mention that had great games. I thought everybody came out really flying. I thought that Nuge line with Ryan, they were in on pucks with Archibald all night. They had a couple of good offensive chances where they stayed in the zone and just did all the right things. I thought it was a good overall team game. And they came out flying right off the start, which they haven't done the last few games. And, it made a big difference. Let's talk about each goal because I think it lines up with the good parts of the game. So in the Oilers' first goal, it was just an easy give and go at the offensive blue line. Talked about Draisaitl, how he always gives the puck at just the right time to McDavid. He didn't slow him down, so McDavid goes quickly around the net, wraps it around for an easy goal. And he makes it look easy, and that's why he's a Hart finalist again. The second goal, Kane and McDavid go in on the 2-on-1. No success, but Kane stays in it. And just like he's done since he's put the Oilers jersey on, he smartly goes to the front of the net and he finds a way to get his stick on that puck. And it goes into the back of the net, and the Oilers take a 2-goal lead. It was looking pretty good from there, but the officiating had something to say about it. The Kings get a power play, and they were bound to score one on the power play. It wasn't. Puck had eyes. It went through a bunch of bodies. Just found its way to the back of the net. I'm not sure that you could blame really anybody there after all the penalties that the Oilers were getting called. King's second goal. This is one area where the Oilers didn't look good, but really early in the third, so they didn't come out fully. But McDavid did get back, makes a beautiful defensive play, But Draisaitl and Yamamoto seem to start running around. They go, both of them, after the puck, leaving a couple of options open for Roy. It just ends up in the back of the net. And that's just a couple of little lapses there in the zone early in the third. But here's the good part. It's early in the third period. Kings tie it up, and the Oilers could have folded. But instead, they stay on the attack. Not only do they stay on the attack, but Smith makes some beautiful saves to keep the Oilers in it as well. Only to lead to the third goal, which ends up being a game winner by Tyson Barrie, who deserves one, right? He's been a good offensive D-man for the Oilers for a couple of years. And, again, it's led by a McDavid rush down the side over to Draisaitl, who, again, makes the right pass at the right time. And Barrie doesn't make any mistake. He puts it into the back of the net. So the end result is another Kane empty net goal, and that puts him into the scoring lead for the playoffs for the Oilers at this point. Here's the bad. Most of this is not about the play of the Oilers, but things that happened in the game. Leon Draisaitl. As you saw, we talked about the officiating. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here. Don't know what his status is going to be, but he went down hard and just never played the same style of game the rest of the game, and didn't play as many minutes as you'd expect from Draisaitl in that game. Power play was lackluster last night in the one chance they had, but again, Draisaitl's not playing at full capacity. The officiating. This was probably the worst part of the game. And normally I wouldn't complain a ton about officiating, but it sure seemed one-sided last night, and it was one of the worst games I've ever watched. Missed calls against the Oilers. Anderson slew foot on Draisaitl. The Anderson hold on Cassian near the end of the period that pretty much takes him down as Cassian's trying to wrap around. Anderson cross-check on McDavid. It just seemed to me unreal that Anderson was able to play a full game and not spend any time in the box last night. There's the open ice interference on McDavid, which, seemed pretty obvious to me. I mean, that's a call they make, 99% of the time in the league. There was a trip on Puljujarvi they missed. Somehow Nugent Hopkins' downward stick motion, like going down on Grundstrom, launches Grundstrom into a Superman into the air. So it seems to go against the laws of physics, but that ends up being a Nugent Hopkins penalty. And then, of course, there's the so-called goaltender interference, which is pretty obvious. He was pushed into the net, and then Kane puts the puck into the net, which they call off, which would have been a 3-0 game. And, just... it was frustrating to watch last night. There was, we talk about game management. This was game outcome management, or the attempt at it last night. It was probably, one of the most I've seen of Woodcroft getting upset at the end of a game. I mean, he wouldn't comment on it, but you knew. And then there was, at the end of the game, he threw his hands up in the air. It looked like he was yelling at the refs. Like he was irate, and I think he had every right to be, especially when you see guys like McDavid getting hit like that in the open ice, pucks nowhere to be seen. You see Draisaitl getting yanked down like that early in the series. You get the DDT call on Nugent Hopkins that never gets called, but last night specifically, the league should be ashamed of that performance by the officiating. It was as bad as I've ever seen, and the Oilers still managed to pull out a win. So I guess, that's a good from the bad, but let's hope going into Game 4, or Game 7 rather, that the officiating will be that much better. So what are the questions going into Game 7? Well, what's the status on Draisaitl? I mean, he looked pretty bad, and we won't know for sure. My guess is he'll be back in playing. Now, it's been talked about on the socials, on the telly, everywhere. Woodcroft has gone away from what was successful for the Oilers at the end of the season, which are the line matchings that he had. How sustainable is it for Game 7 to put the lines in a blender like that? And if Draisaitl is well enough to play, do we see him back on the line with McDavid? I think if Draisaitl's in, we'll see him on the line with McDavid to start the game. That part I feel confident in. Now, do the Oilers still go 11-7 with Nurse drawing back in after the suspension? We'll see about that too. I thought Broberg, for the 3 minutes he did play, he did all right. He did lead to one icing, but afterwards he was fine. And, he was a young guy. He's 20 years old. First playoff game, tough situation, elimination game. I think he did all right. Most importantly to me, though, is can the Oilers come out strong again? This is what's plagued them in the losses they've had so far. So that's it for the Oilers Heavy Hockey post-game. Please like and subscribe to the Heavy Hockey YouTube channel. Give us a like. And we'll be back for Game 7 for another Heavy Hockey post-game. See you then.